currently uses about 14 cubic kilometers of oil, or oil equivalent, in oil, gas, and coal. But that is actually dwarfed by the continual influx of energy from the fusion reactor 8.3 light minutes away. And our sun bombards our planet with 10,000 times the energy we use from all sources combined. That means that one day of our energy needs is met by the content of just 10 seconds of sunlight hitting the planet. And that 1 year of our energy needs is met by the energy in just 1 hour of the sunlight that bombards our planet. And that manifests in multiple ways. It manifests in differential heating of the atmosphere that drives wind. It manifests in direct photons hitting the ground that we can harness, which is driving tremendous innovation in how we store this energy. It has huge implications for transportation and the future of oil. And at the end of this talk, I'll come back to some thoughts on how do you take action in such a rapidly changing market. Let's drill into those points one by one. Wind power. Wind power was a footnote in the global energy mix a decade ago. Today, it's about 6% of electricity in the US. That's not a whole lot, but that's a 10x growth in 11 years. Not the sort of thing that normally happens in energy, and that growth continues. Now, that growth was started by policy decisions that wanted to scale this up, but policy alone would not have had an effect anything like this if it were not for the incredible pace of innovation in this sector. Wholesale US electricity prices are around 6 cents a kilowatt hour. In 1980, wind power cost nearly 10 times that. 55 cents. There was no reason to use it within very specialized applications or because of subsidies or mandates or so on. That has changed dramatically. This year, the average price of a new wind power contract in the US will hover around 2 cents per kilowatt hour. Take out all subsidies, that's perhaps 4 cents a kilowatt hour. So this, in windy parts of the world, this is now the cheapest energy you can buy at a 25 times price reduction over the last few decades. That's happening as we build these larger wind turbines that can scale higher, where the wind blows more consistently and more quickly, where as you double the length of a blade, you quadruple the amount of energy it captures. And so as we build these larger turbines, we bring down the price. But more importantly, wind power has always been seen as intermittent. But these larger turbines, made of advanced materials like carbon fiber in some cases, can also capture lower speed winds, generating electricity in more parts of the country and in more hours during the day. So we talk about a number called capacity factor, which is for an energy source, what fraction of its total peak output does it produce at any one time. Wind power used to be at 10% capacity factor. Now in the best sites in the US, on land, it's over 50%, and the DOE estimates that the next generation of turbines will be at 60 or 65% over enough of the US to satisfy all of our electricity needs. So for the places where the wind blows, this is simply the cheapest power you'll be able to buy. And the scale of these things is enormous. The next generation of wind turbines have wind blade spans that are twice the size of the largest commercial airlines. That's the scale that we're talking about constructing these. So wind power prices will keep on growing, will keep on dropping. But I want to talk about solar, where the pace of innovation has been even faster. Enough photons hit the ground that with 1/3% of the world's land area and current technology of solar, we could meet all of the world's energy needs. The issue is not abundance of land or abundance of sun. The issue is and always has been economic. Covering the land, that much land, with solar panels would have cost quadrillions of dollars at one point. But that has changed enormously because of the incredible plunge in solar prices over the last few decades. Since the late 1970s, the cost of 1 watt of solar material has dropped by a factor of 200. That is unlike anything else in physical infrastructure. Transport costs haven't plunged that way. The cost of building buildings hasn't plunged that way. The cost of building factories hasn't plunged that way. This is more like the digital revolution than anything else, and this plunge is continuing. And that means that now in solar, we are also seeing crossover. By crossover, I mean the point at which, in the sunniest parts of the world, with no subsidies, solar is simply the cheapest energy you can buy. Let me show you. In the US, natural gas power is the cheapest sort of ordinary power you can buy, 5 to 6 cents a kilowatt hour. right? In China, the west of China, the Gobi Desert, the world's largest solar company, Trina, is building a 1 gigawatt plant at about 6 cents a kilowatt hour. Palo Alto in the US signed the cheapest deal in the US late last fall. It was at 3.6 cents. Back out all the subsidies, that's 5.1 cents a kilowatt hour, undercutting the cost of natural gas in the California market. The US solar price, this is the price of actual contracts signed, has plunged by a factor of 5 in the last 8 years. India, one of the sunniest parts of the world, 3.1 rupees is the price of coal electricity. Last month, they signed a deal for 2.97 rupees, 4.5 US cents a kilowatt hour for solar in India, undercutting with no subsidies the cost of coal. Mexico, late last year, power auction, average bid 5.1 cents. The lowest solar bid was from an Italian company, Enel, at 3.5 cents. That's half the price of a natural gas plant in Mexico, unsubsidized. Chile, we've had a dozen cases where power auctions have been swept by solar, with the lowest of those in August last year at 2.91 cents a kilowatt hour. Now, that was not just the cheapest price for solar ever signed, that was the cheapest unsubsidized contract for electricity of any sort on planet Earth with any technology ever in history. All right? That record lasted about 1 month, until in September of last year in Dubai. This is my favorite picture, by the way. This deal was signed, the second tranche of a 1.3 gigawatt plant, at 2.4 cents a kilowatt hour. This is less than half the price of natural gas in the US. It's dramatically lower than the cost of natural gas in the Middle East or Africa. And it wasn't just one company with an unusually aggressive bid. There were 4 companies that came in with bids of less than 3 cents in this auction. 4 companies that came in less than the record low price of a year past. So of course this is regional, right? This is the cheapest energy technology in the sunniest parts of the world. In the US, that starts in the south and especially the southwest. In Europe, it's really started in Germany, but not out of any good sort of physical sense, if you will. It's a political decision the German people made. But really the south of Europe has cheaper solar because of more sunlight. Worldwide, there's 1.3 billion people with electricity. Where do they live? Almost entirely in these red areas, in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. So those who have energy poverty today will get some of the cheapest electricity. But the counterpoint is that in the long term, the cheapest energy on planet Earth, the cheapest electricity you can buy, will be in the sunniest parts of the world. And that will have a major geopolitical impact, because today the global north is rich and the global south is poor, but the global south is about to become energy rich. Now, I told you that solar makes wind look slow. Wind power scaled by 10x over the last decade or so. Solar power has grown 100x over the last 13 years. In your intro talk, you learned that if you take something that looks like a J-curve, a hockey stick, it's an exponential, put it on a log scale, it's a straight line. This is the growth of solar on a log scale, on an exponential scale, growing at 35 to 40% per year for the last 20 years. It will slow eventually. This pace cannot be maintained indefinitely. But right now, what we're seeing is exponential growth. And that has this other effect, a feedback loop, if you will. Because one exponential law we know of is this thing called Swanson's law. And it's actually quite universal. It applies in lots of industries. The learning curve, which is that higher scale makes for lower price. This is the cost of solar, not on a scale of time, but on a scale of how big is the industry. And you see that as the cumulative production of the industry goes up and up and up on a log scale, the cost goes down. So if solar is growing, that means the cost is also dropping. If it's cost competitive in new markets, that leads to the price dropping. This is true for all exponential technologies. And it's worth thinking about this positive feedback loop, that you get to some price point that's cheap enough that you can hit some market, maybe a small niche market, but that helps you scale. And that lowers the prices. And that allows you to tap into larger markets, which help you scale, which lower the prices. So this positive feedback loop now we see clearly happening in the area of solar and wind. Now, it's not just the cost of technology that matters. There's a whole system cost, including the labor, the land, the wiring. So when I look for startups to invest in, I look for startups that are solving unsolved problems. Today on our rooftop, the solar panel material itself is only 10% of the cost of getting it installed. So there's practical innovations happening every day. This is a company called Smash Solar that's in my portfolio that makes what they call solar Legos that just snap together, lower the labor skill you need, and lower the time you need by about half. So it's a sort of practical innovation that is a business opportunity in many sectors around here. You can see how fast they're going versus the competition. So in the long term, I used the learning curve to predict solar prices a few years ago, and I got to this forecast that in the sunniest parts of the world, we could be at 2.5 cents a kilowatt hour, and in less sunny places, we could be at 4 cents. And I'm a solar optimist, and I was wrong, because here are the actual prices over the last few years. Those stars just flew in. So solar prices are plunging faster than even those who were considered wildly optimistic about solar saw them happening.